But William Jordan, I want to bring you in because you're a former State Department official, and I want to talk about Donald Trump's diplomacy. It's unique. For instance, last year he had this whole thing of Rocket Man on Twitter. He even called Kim Jong-Un a sick puppy. Today he's smiling and shaking hands with him. He even threatened to unleash fire and fury on North Korea. Now his style, it's not very conventional, but it's worked.
Yes, and before I get to that, let me make two quick points that I think are very important. First of all, I think that this summit today is the first step of, as everybody has been saying, a longer set of negotiations and discussions. This is the get to know you sort of thing.
Indeed.
In my view, the next or the most important thing that will happen, and this is what Donald Trump, and this gets to your point, will be looking for. He wants to invite Kim Jong-Un to Washington. And the idea is to bring him to Washington to basically announce essentially that the negotiations have led to a more concrete framework agreement of the sort that would lead to what the Trump administration hopes would be the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Sort of to be able to say, we did it, and here's, Kim Jong-un here. We're going to basically sign all of the documents. We're going to set in place all of the various complementary steps, diplomatic recognition, that kind of thing. So that's the first thing I want to say. So this is whatever happens today, even if the reality is that the two leaders are still quite far apart on some of the concrete aspects of reaching agreement. The point is, this starts a process, and that the most important phase of this process will be what ultimately happens in Washington when President Trump brings Kim Jong-un there. The second thing that I would say, and this is where John Bolton being in the administration right now is important. I don't have time. I'm not going to get into all of the details of the Libya discussions and the Libya negotiations back in the early 2000s. I was part of that. John Bolton was part of some of it. The key thing there in Libya was in dealing with Colonel Gaddafi's weapons of mass destruction program. It was U.S. inspectors, not UN or other inspectors, that took the lead in getting in and physically seeing what the Libyans had, looking at the documentation, and in the case of the nuclear program, bringing the components back to the United States. Now, I don't think that's at all remotely possible in the Korean case, but I do think that one of the key aspects of this that will mark the difference between the Iran negotiations and some of the other things is that the Trump administration will probably be looking at trying to make this as much of an American-led verification process as possible going forward. Now, these are all the kinds of details that Donald Trump won't be bothered with. Donald Trump is looking for the positive image. He's looking for the ability to be able to say, well, I did this despite what everybody else thought. And look, even though we exchanged some tough words, ultimately, I was able to work with this guy. And, in sort of the TV reality way that he plays it, yeah, I may have created all this concern about and buzz about fire and fury, but look at the result that I got. This is ultimately what counts. I did it. Nobody else did. Nobody else could.